The warning. The Nebula lounge hummed with the quiet conversations of the galaxy's elite. Stella wiped down another table, her worn uniform a stark contrast to the designer clothes and exotic materials worn by the clientele. After 3 years serving drinks to aliens worth more than entire planets, she'd learned to blend into the background. That's exactly why she was in the perfect position to overhear Vex's hushed conversation. Yes, everything is proceeding as planned, the reptilian being hissed into his communicator, his back turned to his business partner. The dragon suspects nothing. Tomorrow he signs the documents, and by week's end, stellar innovations will be mine. Stella's blood ran cold. She glanced at Draken, the imposing dragon businessman who sat mere feet away, completely absorbed in his holographic financial reports. His scales shifted from deep gray to blue as he concentrated, unaware that his trusted partner was plotting his downfall. Every fiber of Stella's being screamed at her to walk away. This wasn't her world. These weren't her problems. She was just a waitress trying to make rent on her cramped level 9 apartment. But she couldn't shake the image of Draken's genuine smile when he'd thanked her for the coffee earlier, or how he'd been the only wealthy patron to ever ask her name. When Vex stepped away to take another call, Stella made her choice. "I know I'm just a human waitress," she whispered, leaning slightly toward Draken's table, "but maybe you shouldn't trust your friends so much." Draken's golden eyes snapped up to meet hers, a small wisp of smoke escaping his nostrils. "Excuse me?" I heard his conversation. "Tomorrow, when you sign those documents, you're signing away your company. He's planning to push you out." For a moment, Draken stared at her in disbelief. Then his expression hardened. "You're certain of what you heard?" Stella nodded, her heart pounding. "Dead certain." When Vex returned, Stella plastered on her professional smile and retreated to the kitchen, but she could feel Draken's intense gaze following her every move. She had no idea she'd just set in motion events that would change her life forever. The revelation. The next morning, Stella's tiny apartment buzzed with an incoming priority message. Still groggy from her late shift, she stumbled to the communication panel, expecting another schedule change from the lounge. Instead, Draken's imposing figure filled her screen. "Miss Stella," his deep voice carried a mixture of gratitude and urgency. "I need to see you immediately. Can you meet me at docking bay 7? 20 minutes later, Stella stood before the massive dragon, feeling even smaller than usual in her civilian clothes. His scales had shifted to a darker, more serious hue. "You saved my company," Draken said without preamble. "Possibly my life." "What happened?" Stella asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. "I did some investigating after our conversation. Vex had been embezzling funds for months, slowly transferring assets to shell companies. Today's signing would have been the final piece, a complete hostile takeover disguised as a partnership expansion." His golden eyes blazed with controlled fury. "The documents contained hidden clauses that would have stripped me of all voting rights and ownership." Stella felt dizzy. "So what did you do?" "I confronted him this morning with evidence. He's currently explaining himself to Galactic Security." Draken stepped closer, his massive frame somehow comforting rather than intimidating. "But that's not why I called you here." He gestured toward the docking bay behind him, where a sleek personal starship waited, its hull gleaming silver in the artificial light. "You could have ignored what you heard. You could have decided it wasn't your problem. But you chose to help a stranger, despite having nothing to gain and everything to lose." Draken's voice softened. "That kind of integrity is rarer than quantum crystals in this galaxy." Stella stared at the ship, confusion swirling in her mind. "I don't understand." "I'm offering you a choice, Stella. You can return to your job at the Nebula Lounge, or you can come work for me. I need someone I can trust, someone who sees beyond wealth and species to the person underneath." The weight of the moment settled on her shoulders as she realized her simple act of honesty had just opened a door to an entirely different life. The new beginning. Stella's hands trembled as she stood at the threshold of the starship. What exactly are you offering? A position as my personal advisor and security consultant, Draken replied, his scales shifting to a warm gold tone. Someone who can move through social situations unnoticed, who understands people in ways that my wealth and status prevent me from seeing. But I'm just a waitress. I don't know anything about business or security. Draken's laugh rumbled deep in his chest. You just prevented a multi-billion credit corporate theft using nothing but keen observation and moral courage. I'd say you're overqualified. Stella looked back toward the space station's residential levels, thinking of her cramped apartment, her aching feet, and the endless parade of dismissive customers. Then she looked at the ship, sleek, beautiful, and representing possibilities she'd never dared to imagine. What would happen to my life here? Your apartment lease will be handled. Your personal belongings can be retrieved later. As for your future. Draken gestured toward the ship's luxurious interior. You'll have quarters aboard my flagship, access to the best education in the galaxy, and a salary that will make your current wages look like spare change. Stella's mind raced. This felt like a fairy tale, too good to be true. Why me? You barely know me. Because in a galaxy full of people trying to use me, betray me, or impress me, you were the first person in years to simply help me. No agenda, no expectation of reward. Just basic decency. His expression grew serious. I've built an empire, but I've forgotten how to trust. You reminded me that honor still exists. Taking a deep breath, Stella stepped onto the ship. Okay. But I have one condition. Draken raised an eyebrow ridge. If this doesn't work out, if I'm not what you need, you help me find a good position somewhere else. I won't go back to pretending I don't exist. Agreed, Draken smiled, extending a clawed hand. Welcome to Stellar Innovations, Stella. Your real life starts now. As the ship's engines hummed to life, Stella watched the space station shrink behind them, carrying her toward a future she never could have imagined. Proving herself. 6 months later, Stella stood in the executive conference room of Stellar Innovations' flagship vessel, wearing a tailored business suit that cost more than she used to make in a year. But the real change wasn't in her appearance, it was in her confidence. The Zephyrian delegation is hiding something, she reported to Draken and his board of directors. During the negotiations, their lead representative keeps touching his left temple when discussing the mineral rights. It's a nervous tell common to his species when they're being deceptive. You're suggesting we walk away from a deal worth 50 million credits based on body language, scoffed Crix, one of the senior executives. Stella had grown used to skepticism from Draken's traditional business associates. I'm suggesting we dig deeper before signing. The Zephyrians discovered something in those mines they don't want us to know about. Draken's scales had shifted to an attentive green. What do you recommend? Independent geological survey. If they refuse or stall, we know they're hiding valuable deposits they plan to keep for themselves. 3 days later, the survey revealed massive quantum crystal veins worth over 2 billion credits, exactly what the Zephyrians had been concealing. How did you know? Draken asked as they reviewed the revised contracts that now heavily favored Stellar Innovations. You forget, I spent years watching people lie to each other over dinner. Wealthy or poor, alien or human, deception looks the same. Stella smiled. The difference is now I'm in a position to do something about it. The board meeting that followed was different from all the others. For the first time, Crix and the other executives looked at Stella with genuine respect rather than barely concealed resentment. The Zephyrian success has opened 3 new opportunities, Draken announced. Each requiring the kind of insight that conventional business analysis misses. Stella, I'm promoting you to Senior Strategic Advisor. As the meeting ended and the executives filed out, Stella remained behind with Draken. You know, sometimes I miss the simplicity of serving coffee, she admitted. But you don't miss feeling invisible, Draken observed. No, Stella replied, looking out at the stars streaming past the viewport. I definitely don't miss that. She had found her place in the galaxy, and it was exactly where she belonged. Full circle. 2 years after leaving the Nebula Lounge, Stella returned to the space station as senior strategic advisor to one of the galaxy's most powerful corporations. The irony wasn't lost on her as she walked through the familiar corridors, now wearing a designer outfit and carrying herself with the confidence of someone who belonged in any room she entered. Stella. She turned to find Marcus, her former supervisor, staring at her in disbelief. Is that really you? Hello, Marcus, she smiled warmly. How have you been? How did you, what happened to you? He gestured helplessly at her transformation. I helped someone who needed it, and it changed everything. Before Marcus could respond, Draken's imposing figure appeared beside her. His scales had shifted to a content blue-green, a color Stella had learned indicated deep satisfaction. Marcus, Stella said, I'd like you to meet my business partner, Draken. Partner? Draken raised an eyebrow ridge, amused. Well, you did just make me a full partner yesterday, Stella reminded him with a grin. The promotion had been Draken's way of acknowledging that Stellar Innovations' remarkable growth over the past 2 years was as much due to Stella's insights as his own business acumen. Together, they had revolutionized not just interplanetary commerce, but how different species collaborated across the galaxy. We're here on business, Stella explained to Marcus. Stellar Innovations is opening a new division focused on hospitality and service excellence. We want to ensure workers throughout the sector are treated with dignity and paid fairly. Starting with the Nebula Lounge, Draken added. We're implementing new standards for working conditions and compensation. Marcus's jaw dropped. You're going to change how the entire station operates? One establishment at a time, Stella nodded. Nobody should have to feel invisible just because they serve others. As they toured the lounge where Stella's journey had begun, she watched the current staff with new eyes. She saw herself in their tired faces and practiced smiles, remembering what it felt like to be overlooked and undervalued. You know, Draken said quietly as they observed the evening rush, sometimes I think I got the better end of our bargain. I kept my company, but you changed my entire perspective on what business should be. We both won, Stella replied, watching a young Andromedan waitress struggle with an overloaded tray. But the real victory is making sure others get the same chance. As they left the station the next day, Stella looked back one last time at the place where a simple act of honesty had transformed her life. She thought about all the beings working there who deserved better, and smiled knowing that change was coming. The Starship's engines hummed as they prepared for departure to their next destination, another station, another opportunity to make a difference. Stella settled into her chair beside Draken, no longer the invisible waitress but a force for change across the galaxy. Some stories end with riches or revenge, but the best ones end with purpose. And Stella had found hers among the stars, proving that sometimes the smallest acts of courage create the biggest changes in the universe. The end.